So Anna Kasparian went on the PBD podcast with Patrick Bet-David and all of his co-hosts. And I've been on this podcast before. Everybody should go check that out. I definitely would go on this podcast again. It's a lot of fun. They're definitely right-leaning, if not just right-wing. But they have an interesting podcast in the sense that they'll talk to like literally anybody. And sometimes you get some good debates that unfold there. I think we had a good debate when I was on that show. But so towards the end of the podcast, the issue of Israel and Gaza gets brought up. Of course, this is the hot topic at the moment because of the Hamas terror attack on October 7th against innocent Israeli civilians, but also the reaction from Israel, which has been to do collective punishment of all Gazans, okay? So they get into a back and forth here. Adam and Anna start having a pretty heated debate. Let's watch and then we'll break it down.
The biggest point of the thing. Number one, we need to be focused on America. Who are America's allies? Come second. Is it Israel or is it Hezbollah, Hamas, ISIS, Al Qaeda, Islamic Jihad, the Muslim Brotherhood?
Israel for 200.
What are we even talking about
Israel
right
for
here?
200.
What are we even talking about right here? Like, this equivocation, especially on the woke college campus left of this,
So let me jump in on
All right,
this.
hold on. I don't like this point from Adam because the argument is the reason why we should be very critical of Israel and hold them to a higher standard is that U.S. tax dollars go to Israel. So we are at least partly responsible for what they do with our money in our name and in the name of Israeli citizens. That's why we're critical. So $4 billion a year goes from the U.S. government to Israel. We give them Iron Dome. We give them weapons. And then if they use those weapons to do collective punishment against all Gazans and bomb indiscriminately, yeah, we're going to criticize that, and we should. And he brings up this idea of like, this moral equivalence. You can't say, that Hamas is targeting civilians on purpose, and he's going to argue Israel doesn't. I have a bridge to sell you if you believe that. Israel absolutely is targeting civilians on purpose. How do we know that? They're doing a medieval siege against over 2 million people. If they were being specific, then they wouldn't be cracking down on 2 million plus people. That's obvious. All right, let's let Anna respond.
My views on it are a little more nuanced. Look, what's currently happening to Palestinian civilians. First of all, let me just get this out of the way. It's really important. I was disgusted to see anyone on the left justify or provide.
By the way, shout out to my name. You can see my name here, Kyle Kulinski. I strategically picked the best part to sign because you see it in almost every episode.
Cover for a terrorist group like Hamas. I was horrified by what Hamas did. Absolutely, Israel should go after Hamas. I have no problem with that. Now, the way the Israeli government and the IDF is going after Hamas is basically ethnically cleansing Palestinians from the Gaza Strip, okay? Look, I'm Armenian. I see genocide when I can recognize genocide when I see one. It is so obvious to me. Like, I'll give you a few examples. If you wanted to root out Hamas, you send in special ops.
I agree.
Okay, that is how you do it. And I'm not saying that as some lefty. Jocko Willink said that. Someone who is incredibly experienced in the military. He's like, this is how you get Hamas. Bombing the crap out of residential buildings, okay, out of that Greek Orthodox church, out of the areas where all of these innocent Palestinian civilians are living in or fleeing from is not the right way to go. And look, that...
To back her point up real quick, and Adam Johnson made this point to us on Crystal Kyle and Friends last week. I thought it was a great point. Everybody acknowledges, everybody knows, Hamas leaders are in Qatar. The Israeli government says that. The U.S. government says that. It's a well-established fact. Everybody knows this. Okay, so why wouldn't Israel pay off the government of Qatar and go send in some special forces to murk Hamas leadership? Or you could pay off the government of Qatar and go in there and arrest the Hamas leaders and try them at the International Criminal Court. Why wouldn't you do that? You would be going after like 7 people who are directly responsible for it, as opposed to killing over 8,000 innocent civilians in Gaza. That's the way to go about it. But it doesn't give them the retribution and the revenge and the vengeance and the retaliation that they're looking for right now. That's what they want. Like the United States after 9/11. We don't know. Somebody's got to pay for this. Somebody's got to be punished. Let's just bomb indiscriminately. Horrible idea, and she's 100% right.
In the long term, will not keep Israel safe. Because what that policy of just bombing the crap out of that area and wiping out entire families does is it breeds more extremism. Okay?
Yeah, and I know she would agree with this too, but it's also just wrong in principle, right? as a matter of morality and ethics. It is wrong to murk innocent civilians on purpose. It's wrong when Hamas does it. It's wrong when the IDF does it with bombs from the sky. But she's also right in that, yeah, even if you solely care about Israel and you don't care much about the Palestinians, you are creating many more hard right Palestinians who are going to want to be militant. So even from a purely selfish perspective, it makes no sense.
First of all, I think it's wrong. I don't think those civilians deserve it.
She made the point that I just interrupted her to make.
Okay. The majority of the civilians living in the Gaza Strip weren't even born at the time that Hamas was voted in. Okay. Most of them, half of them are under the age of 18.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So the point that I'm trying to make is there is a way of supporting Israel, which I believe we should do, right? Without justifying what they're currently doing in the Gaza Strip, right? We should provide them with the intel they need. We should provide them with the weapons they need, with the condition that they're going to carry out these operations, special ops, as opposed to bombing the crap out of the Gaza Strip, killing all of these innocent civilians from a remote location.
And I would also say a very, very long time ago, we should have conditioned our aid to Israel contingent upon some sort of a deal to give Palestinians human rights and political rights. There's debate on the left. Is it a one-state solution where it's a democratic state for all, everybody gets equal rights, so end the occupation, end the apartheid, everybody's a full citizen? Could be binational or not, that's all debatable, but either one-state solution or two-state solution on the 1967 borders. But we should have conditioned our aid with those terms because we have leverage over them. George H.W. Bush conditioned a $10 billion loan guarantee contingent on them freezing settlements. And they froze the settlements. Ronald Reagan got Israel to stop relentlessly bombing innocent people in Lebanon. Said, you have to stop it. It's a Holocaust. They stopped it. Apparently, Reagan reportedly turned around after the fact and was like, I didn't know I had that power. Well, they listened. We give them money. We give them weapons. We're their strongest ally. We have a lot of control in this situation, and Biden is just green-lighting what they're doing, which is horrendous.
That's wrong.
Anna, with all due respect, you're sort of falling for the mainstream narrative that you talk about railing against.
No, you are. You are. The mainstream narrative in the West, especially in TV news, is Israel has a right to defend itself, and any innocent people who die on the Palestinian side is just collateral damage. Israel's not targeting innocent civilians. Yes, they are. They bombed schools. They bombed hospitals. 62 health centers. So even if you say the Al-Ali hospital was not, 62 different health centers. They bomb apartment buildings and mosques, civilian infrastructure all over the place. They told people to flee from North Gaza to South Gaza and then bomb 70 people when they were listening and going to South Gaza. 8,000 dead civilians, thousands of children. 62% of the dead are women and children. If you seriously think they're not targeting civilians, I got a bridge to sell you. You're the one falling for the mainstream media narratives.
We all saw the story about the hospital that was bombed by Israel. How could you do this? How could you kill innocent civilians? The New York Times basically is now retracting their statement. Yeah, it turns out it was the Islamic Jihad with a failed rocket. I can assure you of this.
Hold on.
He's wrong, by the way. That is not true. I've seen a number of different analyses on that, and the ones that are still, to me, the most persuasive by a mile, it was the IDF who did it. Why? Guys, Hamas doesn't... and Islamic Jihad, they don't have rockets that kill that many people. They don't. The most they ever get is like 12, right? Usually it's like 2 or 7. There were hundreds of people who died there. And by the way, there was one video that was verified that it was the attack, right? And the audio quality of the missile was definitely a very powerful weapon that they don't have access to. So and by the way, the Israeli government changed their story multiple times in the immediate aftermath. Like, like I said, even if I grant you that point, there's 61 other health facilities that were bombed. Were they all Hamas? No, Occam's razors, the people that already launched 8,000 missiles into Gaza are the ones who launched this one. So even if I grant you that point, you're still wrong. But again, I don't grant that point. I think the evidence is overwhelming in the other direction. And the New York Times actually did a forensic analysis and said, no, the Israeli story doesn't make sense. There was a London institute as well that did an analysis and said the exact same thing. But anyway, let's continue.
That is not definitive, number one.
Yeah, it's still
that is not definitive,
even
number
the Wall
one.
Street Journal came out and said
that is one example.
No, the Wall Street Journal and New York Times initially watered down their language and made it more weaselly because they were getting relentlessly bullied by the IDF and psycho far-right Israeli supporters. That's why they changed their language, and they shouldn't have, by the way.
Even if I give you that argument and it is proven without any doubt that it was Hamas that did that, that is one incident in a situation where 1.1 million Palestinians are being told to evacuate their homes. As they're being evacuated to the part of the Gaza Strip where they're going to be safe, that area gets bombed.
Yep.
Okay.
So let me ask you a very direct question. Do you think Israel wants to kill innocent civilians?
I do.
You think Israel genuinely wants to?
I do.
What evidence do you have of that?
The evidence is...
Yes. I'm so happy she didn't back down on this point. This is such an important point, and it is so... Again, you want to talk about falling for mainstream narratives. If you don't think Israel is targeting civilians on purpose, you are the biggest sucker. You are the big... Is it just an oopsie? By the way, in 2014, Operation Protective Edge, the last time there was fighting that broke out on a big scale, the number then, according to the UN, is 80% civilian death rate. Look, if your civilian death rate, I'll be kind. Let's say it's 1 out of every 10 are civilians. That's really high. But if you want to say, hey, that's an accident, okay, I'm open to that argument. Once you get to 20, 30, 40, 50%, and 80%, by the way, the low estimate was 60% civilians. The high one is 80. If you really believe it's an accident, that's hilarious. Like Anna just pointed out, if they're not doing collective punishment, why did they cut off food, fuel, and water to all of Gaza? It is by definition collective punishment, and you're saying 2.3 million people are guilty for the actions of Hamas.
Refusing to do special operations and instead are relying on bombing areas where they know civilians are at, and then they'll turn around and say, well, Hamas is using them as human shields.
So if someone was shooting at you, you don't have kids, right?
If an armed man grabbed a family member of yours, do you have kids?
No, I don't.
Oh, do you have? Okay, your mother. You talked about your mother. If an armed gunman grabbed your mother, had a gun to her head, okay, and he is confronted by the authorities, by law enforcement. And law enforcement, they just decide, you know what? We're not going to negotiate. We're not going to do anything. We're just going to shoot the hell out of both of them. And then they come to you and say, well, your mother, sorry, was a human shield. Would you accept that argument?
That's not the question, though.
Would you accept that argument?
That is exactly the question. That is literally exactly the question. That's the whole point. Even if you grant the idea they're human shields. They're human shields. They are purposefully using civilians to cover their ass. The reaction we have to human shields, if there was some psycho who was holding hostages in a school, would the local police department come drone strike the school? If you had hostages, a criminal take hostages in a school with a gun to a toddler's head, would the local police department or the National Guard or the U.S. military come drone strike the school and say, yeah, there were 17 kids inside, but they were used as human shields? What do you want me to do? No! So even the human shields argument falls apart under the most minimal scrutiny. And he's like, well, that's not the question. That is literally exactly the question, Adam. That is exactly the question.
You're making up a random story that my mother is held captive.
No, that is the human shield argument. Oh my God, Adam, what are you doing?
And
using Palestinians as human shields is not a justification to indiscriminately bomb the hell out of that region, knowing full well that the majority of people who are going to end up dying are not Hamas militants who are underground in the tunnels, okay? Okay, it's the innocent civilians who are going to lose their lives.
She's absolutely cooking him right now.
And the flippant behavior that I see from the West in regard to all of those innocent people losing their lives disgusts me. Okay, seeing people having to leave, vacate their homes, everything that they've known, being forced to leave the land that they have. That is exactly what happened to Armenians. That is exactly what happened during the genocide. And the fact that the United States is just willy-nilly providing cover for that behavior absolutely disgusts me. Israel has a right to defend itself. How it defends itself is where we should have that conversation. Sending special ops in to get Hamas, hell yeah, go get them. But the idea that all of these innocent kids should lose their lives as a result of this, I don't believe it. I will never support it. And in the long run, that is going to make Israeli civilians less safe, not more safe. It breeds more extremism.
Okay, she's absolutely obliterating him. And I think a really important part of why she's obliterating him is because she's making the special ops point, right? Look, it was true. In the wake of the October 7th terror attack, there were a bunch of idiots who were out there like, hey, this is what decolonization looks like. This is what resistance looks like. This is, they're throwing off the chains of their oppressor. They're breaking out of the open-air prison. There were a lot of people who were justifying and rationalizing a Hamas terror attack purposefully targeting civilians. That's disgusting. Those people are wrong, morally and ethically, and they're also going to lose any fucking argument they have because they're okay with terrorism on one side of it. She's very clear. Those Hamas terrorists are criminals. I have no problem with special ops to take them out specifically. So I'm not some squishy, lefty here who's doing apologetics for Hamas, but also the IDF are acting like a terrorist military by targeting civilians on purpose. And that's why he's just out of his depth.
By the way, it's dragging us into a broader war. Okay, you have the Arab world like ready to go, and you have Israel under the leadership of Netanyahu acting incredibly belligerent, doing airstrikes in freaking Lebanon. Okay, talking about going to war in Iran. We're going to bring in all of these Arab countries. You think the United States is going to stay out of that? Hell no. We're going to be dragged into more forever wars. But I just think it's so destructive, so stupid. We're not thinking critically and strategically about how to help our ally Israel while also preventing the reproduction of more extremism.
Yeah, the extremism is never going to go away.
It's not
That's
gonna,
the foundation of what Hamas is.
It's not going to go away.
In their founding doctrine,
let me tell you something.
Their entire doctrine is to eliminate every Jew that lives in Israel.
Let me explain.
Do you acknowledge the founding doctrine of what Hamas is? The annihilation of all Jews?
I hate Hamas.
Okay. He's also not telling you that it was either 2017 or 2018, the newer Hamas charter says we're not targeting all Jews. We're targeting Zionists, and we want the 1967 borders and a two-state solution. So Hamas even caved to the argument for a two-state solution. He's not telling you that part. Now, by the way, whether or not you take Hamas at their word is a separate question. I don't. I don't think you should either. But at the same time, you shouldn't take the IDF at their word either. He's saying, oh my God, they want to wipe out all Jews. They want to wipe out all Jews. Right now, Israel is ethnically cleansing Gaza. Right now, they are purposely targeting civilians and doing a forcible transfer. They're trying to do a forcible transfer where they're forced to go to Egypt and they lose their homes. So, yes, do I condemn the idea that some people want to get rid of Israel or get rid of all Jews? Absolutely. Israel currently is trying to get rid of all Palestinians in Gaza in the real world, and it's happening right now. So it's just like, oh, God. They always just fall back on this point. Well, what about the Hamas founding charter? Also, by the way, what about the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu in 2019 said very clearly Israel should be propping up Hamas? And why did he make that argument? He said, look, these people are really unreasonable, so they make the Palestinians look insane to the rest of the world. And so you want to prop them up because then there's no hope of Israel getting of Palestine getting a two-state solution. So he wanted to prop them up on purpose. And Haaretz, one of the leading newspapers in Israel, came out and criticized Netanyahu for this and said he's largely responsible for the terror attack because you propped up Hamas.
Let me be clear.
So the question is, how do we annihilate them?
Well, you can't find.
I need you guys to understand something.
Can't. Okay, Jesus Christ. How do you annihilate Hamas? That's the question he's asking. How do you annihilate Hamas? How do you annihilate the ultra-Orthodox illegal Israeli settlers who are violating international law on a daily basis and murking Palestinians while they are on their own land? Is it possible? How do you get rid of IDF war criminals? How do you get rid of them? How do you get rid of terrorism? This is the level of question he's asking. It's the George W. Bush. We're going to wage a war on terror. We're going to go after terror. But you can't get rid of all terror in the same way you can't get rid of all murder, in the same way you can't get rid of all hardline right-wing extremists in the Palestinian territories, and you can't get rid of all hardline right-wing extremists in the Israeli territories. That's not possible. How are you going to eliminate Hamas? You are creating the next generation of Hamas fighters right now by killing innocent people in Gaza. Oh my God, this is so stupid.
The innocent civilians killed nobody, including the IDF.
If a government wiped out my entire family, I have nothing left to live for. And I'm real angry, okay? That is a dangerous combination. And that is exactly what is being bred right now as we speak, as entire families are getting wiped out, civilian families in the Gaza Strip. I totally get that, the discourse in the United States has essentially dehumanized these people. But at the end of the day, they're innocent people in a terrible situation, and they don't deserve the absolute hell that they're dealing with right now, the death and destruction that they're dealing with right now. I want a peaceful two-state solution. This ain't the way to get it.
Woo! Okay, that was devastating. That was flawless victory. By the way, the argument goes on, and the person, I don't know this guy's name, but the person sitting to Anna's left, he wasn't there when I was on the podcast. I don't think he was, at least. But he ends up jumping in on the side of Anna, arguing that she's right. So, really interesting. I highly recommend you go watch the entire Israel debate portion of this podcast. It's like from about an hour and 45 minutes to the end, basically. Definitely go check it out. But that was devastating. That was, as Mortal Kombat would say, flawless victory. All right, guys, that's the show. I love you all very much. Thank you, as always, for listening to me babble. We're way over time today. I got to get out of here. But everybody do me a big favor. Please click like. Please click subscribe. Please click that bell icon so you get a notification every single time a video drops. Please consider supporting the show on Patreon. I've never had a conversation with an advertiser. You guys fund this show from the ground up. You guys help make it work. I deeply, deeply appreciate it. Patreon link below. Also, you can tip on YouTube with the thanks button. That's below as well. Or you can sign up for Crystal Kyle and Friends. We're going to be talking to Omar Bader this week on Israel-Palestine. It's what's happening is so important, and this guy's an expert, and we're going to dive into every single angle of it as we always do. And that's all I got for you guys. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.